Saudi Arabia is universally known for their massive oil reserves and extreme wealth. Their flagship company, Saudi Aramco, is worth over $2 trillion and has annual earnings exceeding $250 billion. They also apparently have 266 billion barrels of oil, which works out to roughly one-sixth of the entire world's reserves. With such large reserves, you would think that the country would avoid importing oil like the plague. But Saudi Arabia has actually been doing the exact opposite. They've actually been doubling down on oil imports since June. And this isn't the first time Saudi Arabia has leaned into imports either. Historically, Saudi Arabia has embraced oil imports whenever they need more oil. But why would a country like Saudi Arabia ever need more oil? Wouldn't it always just be cheaper to use their own? I mean, just take a look at Venezuela, who is able to offer subsidized gas for just 8.4 cents per gallon. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, comes in at $2.34 per gallon, which is really not that impressive for the world's oil kingdom. So, why in the world is Saudi Arabia importing oil? And why are gas prices so high in Saudi Arabia itself? One of the primary reasons that Saudi Arabia turns to imports is because of the different types of oil. To most of us, all crude oil probably appears the same, but there's actually 6 different types of oil. These oils are usually classified into 3 main categories, which are light, medium, and heavy. The attribute that differentiates these 3 categories is a scale called API gravities that essentially ranks these oils based on their densities in comparison to water. Within these main categories, you have 2 subcategories, which are sweet and sour. These subcategories are reflective of the given oil's sulfur content. The lower the sulfur content, the sweeter the oil. Technically, we do have processes to convert between the various types of oil. I mean, it really just comes down to removing impurities or varying the sulfur content. But more times than not, it's cheaper to use these oils in their natural state than trying to convert them into a different state. Light crude oil is generally the most valuable type of oil, given that it's the easiest to refine and has the largest amount of use cases. This is the type of oil that is used to produce gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel. In other words, this is the type of oil that runs the world. Heavy crude oil, on the other hand, is also pretty useful, given that it's what's used in most manufacturing processes. Heavy crude plays an essential role in producing industrial products such as asphalt and plastics. With light and heavy out of the way, that leaves us with medium crude oil, which is usually the most underappreciated. Medium crude is actually the most common type of oil, but there aren't very many use cases for it in its natural state. So medium crude is usually distilled to create light crude. In terms of the subcategories, sweet crude is what the world craves, and sour crude is generally just converted into sweet crude. With that being said, the most valuable type of oil has historically been a light sweet crude due to the exponential growth within the automotive and aviation industries. But as the world's oil consumption started to stabilize, it became evident that oil giants may have diverted too much of their focus to light sweet crude. We were starting to get into a position where there was an oversupply of light crude and an undersupply of heavy crude. So, while light sweet has historically demanded a premium, much of that premium has slowly eroded away over the years, and in some cases, light crude even trades at a discount. I know that all of that info may have been a little dense, but I think it's important in understanding a country's complex oil needs. Now that we have a basic technical understanding regarding the various types of oil, let's delve into why Saudi Arabia imports oil. Given the success of Saudi Arabia's oil industry, I don't think you'd be surprised to hear that their reserves primarily consist of light crude. Saudi Arabia does produce 5 different grades of oil, which are Arabian Heavy, Arabian Medium, Arabian Light, Arabian Extra Light, and Arabian Super Light. But as you can see, 3 of these are simply subcategories of light crude, which makes the country prone to imbalances. Something else to note is that virtually all of Saudi Arabia's oil reserves are sour oil. The only exception to this is the offshore Safaniya oil field. Fortunately, this happens to be the world's largest offshore oil field, but even Safaniya is only able to produce roughly 1 million barrels per day. Now, that's not a bad amount by any means, but in comparison to Saudi Arabia's total oil output of 10 million barrels per day, that's only 10%, meaning that 90% of Saudi oil is sour. So, while Saudi Arabia has enormous oil reserves, the vast majority of it is light crude sour oil. Naturally, this leads to imbalances, which Saudi Arabia has to make up for using imports. Also, something that we should note is that Saudi Arabia is not only looking to make up for internal imbalances, but international imbalances. You see, even though Saudi Arabia does not have the world's largest oil reserves, they've become the dominant voice within the industry, and they're trusted around the world as the oil bankers. Saudi Arabia takes this responsibility extremely seriously, and for them, this has become a matter of pride and control. Now, this does not mean that if Botswana has a shortage of oil or if gas prices are skyrocketing in Europe, Saudi Arabia is gonna come to the rescue. But what this does mean is that they're willing to do whatever it takes to deliver the oil that they have promised to deliver. And this includes importing oil to make up for supply/production shortages. A perfect example of this was in 2019 when their oil processing facilities were attacked. Drones were used to severely damage oil facilities in Abqaiq and Kuriz, which disrupted the vast majority of the country's oil output. A rebel group from Yemen would claim responsibility, but given the sophistication of the ordeal, Saudi Arabia suspects that it was actually Iran. Iran has profusely refused involvement, but really, the identity of the perpetrator is not really important for what we're talking about. The point is that Saudi Arabia's oil facilities were significantly damaged, which lowered output by 5.7 million barrels per day. Given the circumstances, I don't think anyone would have blamed Saudi Arabia if they fell short of their delivery numbers. But despite this, Saudi Arabia would import oil from a bunch of foreign oil producers to, quote, give customers every drop of oil they've ordered. Pride no doubt plays a role in this decision, but there's a substantial amount of strategy here as well. By stepping up to the plate even during a national crisis, Saudi Arabia has shown the world that they will stop at nothing to deliver on their promises. And this has given the world very little reason to diversify away from Saudi Arabia. Now, imagine if Saudi Arabia didn't import oil. Sure, no one would have blamed them. But Saudi Arabia's customers would have probably diversified to other oil producers for their own security. But by stepping up, Saudi Arabia was able to maintain the loyalty of their customers and, more importantly, maintain control. And at the end of the day, that's the name of the game. Keeping control and maintaining pride is not the only reasons that Saudi Arabia imports oil. Another key reason for Saudi imports is opportunity and profits. And with the whole Russia situation going on, this avenue is more open than ever. By now, I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with the Russian oil sanctions. The West has decided to boycott Russian products in order to hurt them economically and quote-unquote teach them a lesson. And given that Russia was the world's second largest crude oil exporter, only beaten out by Saudi Arabia themselves, this has disrupted the global oil supply chain, leading to the super erratic gas prices that we've seen over the past several months. While this is terrible news for Westerners, this has been a godsend for oil-producing countries like Saudi Arabia who have seen record profits. Higher oil prices aren't the only area in which Saudi Arabia is profiting though. Even though global oil prices have been skyrocketing, Russian oil prices have been falling off a cliff given that no Western country wants to touch their oil. On average, it appears that Russia is offering a 30% discount on their oil in comparison to the global benchmark. If Saudi Arabia really wanted to push the envelope, what they could do is import Russian oil at a 30% discount and then sell it as their own at market price. But it's more than likely that they're not doing this. And it's simply not worth risking international oil partnerships for an arbitrage opportunity. But these rules only apply to exports to Western countries. Many of Saudi Arabia's customers are not Western countries, and they do not care about the source of their oil. Two of Saudi Arabia's largest customers are China and India, and these guys have actually gone out of their way to import Russian oil directly. So they definitely do not have a moral dilemma when it comes to Saudi Arabia repackaging Russian oil. Someone else who doesn't have a moral dilemma with Russian oil is Saudi Arabia themselves. It makes very little sense to use your own oil which can be sold for top dollar to Western countries when you can import Russian oil at a 30% discount. It's honestly a no-brainer, and it's no wonder that Saudi Arabia has been leveraging this strategy. The real losers in this situation are everyday Westerners who are paying top dollar for Middle Eastern oil. Not to mention, Western countries are basically still supporting Russia, just through a proxy. Now, this isn't to say that Russia isn't being hurt or that the sanctions aren't effective. I mean, they're literally having to sell their oil for a 30% discount, So clearly, they're being hurt. But the thing to note is that Western countries aren't just hurting Russia, but they're also hurting themselves. And the ones that are truly benefiting are the countries in the middle, like China, India, and of course, Saudi Arabia. In the end, while Saudi oil imports may seem confusing at first glance given their massive oil reserves, they actually make a lot of sense when you take a closer look. First of all, there are several different types of oil, and Saudi Arabia primarily only has light crude sour oil. So they often have to import oil to make up for internal imbalances. But it's not just internal imbalances that they're looking to make up for. All of Saudi Arabia's power originates from their dominance on the global oil markets. If they lose this dominance, they also lose their power and influence on the world stage, which is obviously not something that Saudi Arabia wants to do. To keep their power, Saudi Arabia is willing to go to extreme lengths to meet their production numbers and deliver to their customers. And yes, this includes importing oil at a loss to make up for production shortfalls. Imported oil does not always have to be expensive or undesirable though. Russian oil is extremely desirable right now given that it's selling for a 30% discount. While Saudi Arabia can't just turn around and sell the same oil to Western countries, they can use it themselves and sell it to neutral countries. This way, they can save all of their own oil production for Western markets where it can be sold for absurd profit margins, allowing Saudi Arabia to profit $1 billion on a daily basis. And that's why Saudi Arabia is importing record amounts of oil. Would you be willing to arbitrage between Russia and the West? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if you're hoping that these oil games end sooner rather than later. And of course, consider checking out our Discord community to suggest future video ideas and to consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.